Hi, I'm Tyler Radford and I serve as HOT's Executive Director. It's such a privilege to speak with you today from 2020's Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Summit. This year marks HOT's 10th anniversary and my own 5th anniversary with HOT starting from 2015. Today's theme is the past, present, and future of Humanitarian OpenStreetMap. I'm going to focus on the future. What I want to share with you today is a statement of intent for HOT within the humanitarian and OpenStreetMap ecosystems. This has been shaped by many conversations with community groups, collaborators, and contributors in the universe in which HOT exists, but it only seeks to represent my own perspective and some of the recent thinking within the HOT the NGO. Please think of it as an early draft and as a contribution to a much longer conversation. I also acknowledge that HOT's presentation of itself has increasingly highlighted our successes while smoothing over or not fully acknowledging challenges and failures. Today's summit features fail-fest sessions for the first time, where friends and colleagues are sharing learnings from where they didn't necessarily get it right. This statement is not about what we've gotten right, but about how we'd like to embrace a stronger culture of feedback and learning and hope that by doing so, we can achieve great things with all of you. This year, we received the phenomenal news of our selection as one of 8 world-changing ideas by TED's Audacious Project. In 2019, the HOT voting members told us they wanted an area home to 1 billion people living in countries experiencing high risk of disaster or high poverty levels added to OpenStreetMap. We took them seriously and pitched to Audacious Project investors the idea of mobilizing 1 million humanitarian OpenStreetMap contributors as a way to achieve this. After months of work and multiple stages of application and assessment, several extraordinary philanthropists behind Audacious invested in this vision. However, we know that even if these headline ambitions are achieved, we will have failed if there are not also active and sustainable OpenStreetMap ecosystems in many of the 94 priority countries once the Audacious project finishes in 2025. The approach over the next 5 years, therefore, must be community-centered and strive for local sustainability and local power as key outcomes. This is a game changer for HOT and hopefully for the ecosystem in which we exist. The project funding model that we've relied upon in the past has meant an underinvestment in longer-term community support and contributions. This can now change. But before it does, we know that some serious self-reflection is needed. First, we need to recognize what HOT is and what it isn't. 10 years ago, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team could more or less describe all humanitarian-focused OpenStreetMap contributors. The number of people and initiatives were relatively small, and the players heavily networked. Today, that is no longer true. But we intentionally continued to use the acronym HOT as a catch-all in a very genuine but perhaps naive attempt to be as inclusive as possible. That was a mistake. In conversations over the past months, some people have made it clear to us that this can be problematic. When we refer to HOT communities or the wider HOT community or tasking manager users as HOT community members, we make the mistake of associating groups of people in their work with HOT, even where they haven't themselves chosen that association. We understand now that for those groups, this can feel like HOT taking credit or assimilating, and while this was never our intention, we will stop doing this. We of course welcome all who share our mission to consider themselves part of the HOT family, but while doing so on their own terms. In fact, trying to work through this and define what we mean by HOT and community, we came to a realization that maybe it is not our role to do this defining. Groups contributing to OpenStreetMap already define themselves, and that is as it should be, just as many individual contributors define themselves as part of one or many groups. Maybe our role, therefore, is to work out what HOT should be in relation to them, in order to achieve the ambitions articulated through the Audacious vision. A friend from the OpenStreetMap Africa recently told us, communities stop talking to HOT because HOT only talks about HOT. We recognize that While HOT was instrumental in creating and nurturing the space for dialogue and collaboration to happen around humanitarian use of OpenStreetMap, recently we've too often ended up occupying that space. We will now work towards contributing as a valuable and active constituent part of a much larger network and ecosystem. To achieve our audacious goals, we know that HOT needs to be part of a movement that champions local people, local devices, and open knowledge and data to solve local problems. The movement needs to be inclusive, representative, and value must flow across it in multiple directions. The resources that come from the Audacious Prize can be instrumental in supporting this, but only if they enrich the movement as a whole. In any ecosystem, money and resources equal power. The microgrants program is a great example of where HOT has been successful in developing a mechanism to redistribute money from donors and funders to local communities trying to solve local problems. We need to work out how to be much more radical, though. One example is putting community support funding decisions in the hands of OSM-related groups in each region, and supporting the already great work led by local OSM groups in established and emergent local NGOs, in INGOs, and across OSM in places such as the Local Chapters Working Group and the OSMF. We need help working out how to best contribute to these initiatives and aims, how to turn HOT into a community amplifier, into a sort of humanitarian OSM super spreader, into a vehicle for people who want to save or improve lives, alleviate suffering, and restore dignity using open data, tools, and knowledge. So, what does this all mean practically speaking? Beyond this statement, we have already started to operationalize this intent. I'll talk about 3 ways. First, you may have noticed that this event is no longer called the HOT Summit, but rather the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Summit, a space and time for all those who care about open data and humanitarian action to come together, share, and learn. We are happy to resource and coordinate the event, but it must serve HOSM, not just HOT. This small step is the start of a process of deoccupation of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap space by HOT. Think mailing lists, working groups, communication channels. For this world-changing movement to map our world to get bigger, we at HOT must create space for others to evolve and lead. Supporting the movement, inspiring it, amplifying it, but not controlling or defining it, and making sure we get out of the way. As one example of this, we are making a commitment to stop opening new long-term country offices and will support our existing country office staff in transitioning to fully independent local entities over the course of 2021. Second, we have committed to resourcing 4 regional hubs as part of the Audacious Project, moving decision-making and resources away from a remote global team and closer to where we want to support people and communities. How these hubs evolve is something we need help with, particularly from contributors and communities in those regions. Third, we also commit to doing much more of our thinking in public. While it hasn't been through bad intentions, we have gradually stopped documenting our work, thinking, and decisions in the open. This leads to a less rich ecosystem, limits our contribution to a commons of open knowledge, and makes it hard for others to have an open dialogue with us. As part of that, we're going to reprioritize channels for constructive feedback, criticism, suggestion, and discussion. We have further work to do on how we welcome and facilitate these conversations, but we've made a start at hotosm.org/feedback. At the heart of this is the will to work out what it really means to be a community-centric NGO in this ecosystem. It's not easy. We all truly are trying to do something that's never been done before. A map of our world by and for the people of our world. 1 billion people, 94 countries. We need to think ambitiously, even audaciously, as local and international humanitarian and development partners are relying on us for data that can lead to life-changing impact. But as our OSM Philippines colleagues suggested, we also need to ask ourselves, audacious for who? How do we transform HOT and make it something that enables people living in areas vulnerable to humanitarian crises or with high levels of poverty to achieve their own audacious goals. Coming back to the future of Humanitarian OpenStreetMap, the future is not hot. It is all of us here today, across hundreds of organizations and groups working to make an impact through data. Imagine the realm of what we can make possible together if we get this transformation right. Thank you so much for being part of the summit this year.